I'm here at FantasyCon 2019, which is in Scotland for the first time, and I'm joined by Rob Shearman.
Hello.
Hi Rob.
Hello, John.
How's your FantasyCon experience been?
It's been fun. Yeah, it's odd. I do a lot of conventions, and this is the one that feels like, it sounds so naff, but it's true. It feels like it's a sort of big family of people who are all good friends, or haven't made friends yet but want to. And it's very, very mutually supportive, and it sounds silly, but it's in part because most people here are writers, and writers tend to be a bit socially weird, and we're quite shy, but we're not shy with each other very much. And we come here and we do panels, but we mostly just support each other by buying each other's books and making our egos a bit flattered. And you come away from here every year feeling that, yeah, it's still worthwhile being a writer sometimes, and that's great. So I've had a lovely time. Yeah, it's been very, very gentle, actually. It's a very, very gentle convention.
Good. It's also been good for you. You've had a launch of a new collection.
Yes.
We All Hear Stories in the Dark.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
It's a very silly book.
Is it?
Yeah, well, it's a choose your own adventure book in the style of the Arabian Nights. So it's about a man who has to navigate his way through a labyrinth of 101 short stories. And if he gets the right pathway, he'll win back his dead wife. So it's...
Yeah, how does that work technically then? You've written
101 stories,
okay.
And they all have at the end of it 5 questions leading to different stories about your reactions to that story. And it's about your finding out in some ways your own relationship with the way stories are told, because some of them are funny, some of them are horror, some of them are quite weird and absurd, some of them are very, very naturalistic and emotional, and you don't necessarily know what they're going to be until you get in them.
Right.
But your answers to the questions following them help determine the sort of book you end up reading. And the odd thing about it, because it's basically a sort of maze, it's been worked out by a BBC mathematician, who worked with Brian Cox, that the number of permutations for the book is 40 duovigintillions, which is 40 with 69 zeros at the end, which means that effectively that the odds against anyone reading the same book that you choose to read is so remote. I mean, there are 110 billion people who've ever lived on planet Earth from Neanderthal times, and they could each read the book 110 billion times and still come nowhere near the odds of reading the same book that you've chosen to read. So it's about your discovering your own book through it.
Yes.
But it's vast.
It sounds vast.
It's longer than War and Peace. It's 650,000 words.
So,
it's coming out next year, yeah.
From someone reading the book, say they make their decision and they follow the stories to get to a conclusion, how many stories would that be?
It can be as little as few as 20. It could be 101. I mean, the thing is that if you fail, I mean, the point of the book actually is that there is no failure. It's about the central premise of the book behind it as well is that this man has read all of world literature in 2.5 weeks.
Yes.
Because if we only knew, everything can be read very, very fast if we read it in the right order. And the reason why we as readers stumble our way through only one book every 2 weeks is because we're reading things in the wrong order. And you could read everything ever written very, very fast if we only got it right. And so he has done that. He's read everything to try and find his wife, in a way. And he's now stuck with his final 101 stories. So the idea of it really is that as readers, we have our own right orders. And it's a question of how you respond to my, frankly, quite weird fiction that will dictate what's your right book. So it's a sort of game. But it's quite weird, and it's quite funny, and it's quite moving. It's a story it's largely about the way we bounce off grief, and which sounds awfully miserable, but it isn't really. It took me about 10 years to write.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you?
Yeah.
Where do all these stories come from? Are some of them stories you had, or did you set out to write 100 stories?
No. About 10 years ago, I'd written 3 short story collections, and they'd done pretty well, and they'd won a few awards and things. And I got the idea for this, and I thought, I wish somebody would write a book which is a sort of huge labyrinth of stories, because people like Borges have bounced off the idea of these things before, but speculatively, actually doing it. And I thought, I felt very arrogant, and I thought, well, I'm doing quite well in the short story world. perhaps I should try this. I didn't realise it would take me 10 years. But no, I wrote them more specifically, and I then rejected maybe half of them because you write and then you think that's not good enough. So if you end up writing about 150 short stories in the end, you just don't publish half of them or a third of them. And so it was always intended to be this strange bonkers project. Yes. And I was very, very fortunate that several years in, I found a publisher who thought that would be fun, as opposed to just stupid and totally uncommercial.
And how is your publisher? Your publisher is
it's PS Publishing.
PS Publishing, right? Yes. And how are they approaching the packaging of 101?
Well, it's going to be, because it's also totally illustrated, because we want it to be like a sort of a nice fairy tale storybook. So it's very, very unintimidating to read. It should be like it's a bit of fun, really. We've got Reggie Oliver, who's an amazing writer in his own right, but also a terrific artist, and he's illustrating each story twice, and they're really lovely sort of woodcut illustrations. They're very old-fashioned but beautiful, and it's so gorgeous. I mean, it's very exciting because he's delivering pictures to me almost every other day at the moment of his reactions, and it sort of keeps me going, because I finished writing the book, but it's still obviously there in my veins at the moment. But it's going to be packaged, I think, in 4 volumes which you read for ease. So you buy it in one go, but it's in a sort of slipcase, softback or hardback, and you'll just then, you'll read story 16, and it will say, do you want to turn to story 41, 98, 36, 63 or 12, and then of course you'll be jumping across the volumes. So you buy them all in one go because it's one book, but for ease of being able not to break your own spine, you can have them in different volumes, which is what the 19th century novelists did, because they used to publish novels in 3 volumes or 4 volumes, but they are the same book. You buy them in one go. So it's just a really vast, silly book. It's quite funny. I mean, it sounds so pompous. I mean, all my friends, my family, they've always said, just stop doing it, because it's virtually my entire 40s.
Yes.
Was taken up, because I'm turning 50 in February, and I began when I was 41. So I've given off a decade of my entire life to this book. So have some sympathy. I just turned to the camera there in a really obvious way. That's how I feel. So I've been very relieved, because we launched some. We decided to package together some of the stories with the prologue as a means of demonstrating to an audience what the book is, so people could read early examples and get a flavour of how it looks. And the response has been really, really humblingly nice, because you fear all the time people will just say, I don't care you've done that, I mean that's just stupid, why on earth would you want to expect me to be interested in this? But because it's like a sort of, it's quite bold and it's quite funny and it's different, and everyone's responding to it very, very kindly. So
when it comes to reviews, are you expecting people to read all 101 stories?
No,
or
absolutely
to
not.
Work their way?
No. In part of the joy of the book for me, it's about what you throw away. So if you're reading a story and it gives you 5 options, it's about choosing one and discarding 4. It's not about expecting you to read all the others, but the stories bounce off each other in different ways in the order you read them, because they do interconnect somewhat.
Right.
But you don't have to always get that same interconnection, which is what life is. We are constantly, I argue, making decisions, which means that we are bouncing off into probably different parallel universes, but we don't have to go back and live those other versions. So I'm not expecting anyone to read all 101, but they might read as many as, I think the average will be about 35, which is quite a long book still. Yes, but then it becomes the game of, answering the questions and seeing how you find the path, and there is a map inside the book, but it's hidden, and there are stories which you can only access if you cheat, and then it tells you off if you actually read them, because you shouldn't be reading them, and there are different alternatives of different. It's a very weird game of a book.
Sounds incredible.
But I was massively influenced when I was a kid by reading choose your own adventure novels. I used to love those. You'd go down paths and you get horribly killed. So you'd backtrack and choose a different cave to walk down, and I used to love that. I wanted there to be a sort of a big literary equivalent. So this is what this is. And some stories, as I say, are so dark that it's like a wrong turning, and you read them and you say, I don't want to be this much in the dark, and it keeps on warning you about that.
Right.
So don't just read the horror stories, because they get nasty, some of those.
Wow.
But some of them are great, some of them are very, very lovely, and even quite tender. Honest.
Well, it's
quite funny.
It sounds like something that people haven't seen before. So
No,
I think,
no, and probably
great.
never will again, because it's a stupid idea. It's really crazy I've done this. And I can say this now because I finished it, and I look at it now and I think, I would never have started that now, because it's obviously an insane thing to do. But for some reason, when I was 41, it was probably at the beginning of a midlife crisis, I just thought, yeah, let's just try this insane book.
Yes.
And I'm incredibly relieved at this point that, because I went through, because it was so many years writing it, 3-4 years in, I was thinking to myself, well, this is obviously a mistake, but I can't turn back now. It's a bit like when you, I don't know, go to some sort of strange gig in the middle of nowhere on a field, and then you think you're going to walk back to your hotel, and it's about 12 miles, and then you're about 3 miles in, and you think, well, I mean, obviously it's now raining and it's going to be terrible, but I can't go back to the gig. I've got another 9 miles to go, and I'm not sure where I'm going, but I have to continue going. And that's how it felt writing this book,
yes.
like you were in a rain-sodden gig.
But you have made it.
I have finished it,
yes.
yeah. And having finished it, the worst thing about it was finishing it and then realising that I'd done all 101, but only about 75 of them were good enough. So you had another 2 years left to write replacements to make it a better book. And you think, it's like knowing you've run a marathon, and then being told you've got an extra 3 miles to go at the end. So that was a bit dispiriting, but reading it back, you just think, I can't not let it. It has to be the best it can be.
Gosh.
But I'm genuinely very, very proud of it. I'm sorry, I know it sounds horribly smug, but it's a good book, actually. I think people will really enjoy it if they choose to read it. I hope they choose to read it.
Well, I can't imagine many people will not be intrigued, at least to check it out.
I think it's intriguing.
Yeah.
Even if you say, yeah, it's not something I want to give much of my time to, but I think it's quite fun, and I think people will enjoy the stories.
Yes. This weekend has also been good for you in that you've taken home an award from the British Fantasy Society.
That's really good.
Yes.
That's unexpected.
What was that for?
I won Best Editor for an anthology, which I did with Michael Kelly, who we did it together, and he had a series called Year's Best Weird Fiction, and he's based in Toronto. And he would get every year a guest editor of a reasonably successful short story writer who's known for doing quite weird stuff. And he did Laird Barron was one, and Helen Marshall and Simon Strances, and Kathy Koja did one.
Yeah.
And I was the first person he asked who was British for Volume 5, and it was so much fun, because I tried to read as many things globally as possible to try and find really interesting weird fiction published in the last year. And it was a joy, actually. It was a joy to just read such great stuff and to be able to give a home to it. And I didn't think we were going to win. We got a nomination for the British Fantasy Awards, and Mike came over from Canada, and I thought what he did, I wouldn't do it, Mike. We're not going to win it, because you don't win awards, really. I mean, I've often get award nominations, and you never win.
Right.
I was up for a short story awards, but I didn't win that either. And you kind of know that's going to happen, because the quality is so good, and it does. You have to accept the nomination as being pretty much the actual prize. And so, but they announced our names.
So this must have been quite a nice surprise.
It was great. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately I hadn't. Because I genuinely thought there was a chance I might win for short story, but there was no way on earth I'd win for best anthology, because I'm not an editor particularly. So I thought it wouldn't be deserved. So I was really caught on the hop. So I went up there and made some stupid speech.
Do you think, as an award-winning editor now, do you think you might be inclined to do it again with another collection?
Yeah, if someone wanted me to. I mean, the problem is that you require a publisher for it. So this was done by invitation. I wouldn't feel comfortable about pitching an anthology to an editor or a publisher myself, because you'd rather pitch your own books.
Yes.
Because writing is ultimately quite a selfish thing to do, and editing is, in a funny way, not. I mean, I really loved it because, for once, I wasn't this selfish bastard. I was actually trying to engage with other people's work and just celebrate other people's brilliance. And normally, you just try and persuade people that you're brilliant. So, I mean, I'd do it again in a heartbeat, actually, but I just don't know what opportunities there would be for that. But, you know, I'm open to offers. If someone wanted me to edit an anthology for them, I'd jump at it, actually. It's great fun.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
But this coming year is going to be very much about We All Hear Stories.
We All Hear Stories, yes. So April is at StokerCon in Scarborough will be where we launch it properly, the whole thing.
Right.
And and I've got another book out which I can't talk about in June, which is a novel. And and I'm doing lots of TV at the moment. I'm getting back into television, so it's going to be quite a busy year.
Yeah, great.
But I'm rather pleased about that.
Excellent.
Because if you stop working, you just become really, really self-loathing, and you just eat a lot of chocolate. And in my case, I just begin to torture my cat.
Oh dear.
Well, I'm very fond of my cat, but he gets in the way. And if I'm in a bad mood, I'll do anything to him. So for his sake,
you better keep working.
I better keep working.
People better keep buying.
Yeah, because otherwise, you know, because Nero, who's a beautiful, gorgeous black cat, I will kill him. I will destroy him if people don't.
There you go. Now you know.
Support my work.
Rob, thank you very much.
No, you're very welcome, John. Thank you.
I couldn't possibly end it better.
No,
than that.
and nor could Nero.
No,
it's important.
Thank you.
Thank you.